Hello guys, good morning. Welcome back to our tutorial series guys. So this will be part 4 guys. So if you have not watched on the previous video, the part 3, where the previous video we created a migration, we have created a difficult text this one. So yeah, we are using the DB context or entity framework core. So this is version 8. So if you want to watch to have the detailed overview with that, you can watch the previous video, part 3. And yeah, we successfully have the migration. So we have now the migration here. There's our models that we put it in our entities here. So entities to the model or in the domain class libraries. And then now we are going to create the repository, guys, so we can connect to our, yeah, how you connect to your database. Like, for example, if you're going to create actual database, create, delete, update, something like that. So we will be using generic repository combination of unit of work. So yeah. So first we have to, under our infrastructure folder, we have here the persistent, and think under persistent we have to create the repository, or yeah, I will just have a repository so it will be grouped together. So I have to create a folder here, and this will be the repo. We can just, okay, it's fine, it will be here, repository, or it's your preference if you create the folder in line with your, under your infrastructure, so in line with your persistent. But I prefer that the repository will be under persistence folder. But anyway, it's your, yeah, the way how you like to work on it. So first guy, I have to, yeah, I think the repository, if I have to separate my interface, yeah, I'm just thinking if where's the best way to put the interfaces? Should it be here in the domain, or it's just like it's just okay to be here? Uh, yeah, I don't know. I think we just have to refactor it after we can learn how the best practices in clean architecture. But for now, I'll just put it here. So first guy, I'll have to create a class for uh I mean the interface. This will be our interface because we will be using unit of work. So I will introduce unit of work here. So I have to create interface a unit of work. Unit of work first. Yeah, so this will be our interface, the unit of work. And then from here, we just have to make this interface as public because we have to remove this first. This as public. And then, yeah, the first that we have to define here, we have to use the task synchronous, and it will be of type boolean, and then we can have meta sync. Okay, so this will be the saving the actual to the database, and later on we can introduce some properties here for us to access other entity, and it will serve as a collection. So that's this for now. We will go back to this later. And then once we have that unit of work, of course, we will have the implementation of that. class. So we will have the unit of work concrete class. So just put it here as well. But as long as this is just, oh, we will group that together if this will become bigger. Okay. So but just for now, we just put it here. So this is the concrete class unit of work. So this is the implementation of the interface that we just created. All right, so have to remove the namespace and we have to make this as public class. And then we have to inherit the unit of work interface. So we need to implement the interface. So this is the method and our signature that we have. So our implementation for that, but of course, before we can have the implementation for that, we need to access the DB context. Okay, so we define here, we make it public. And what's our DB context is EGI is DB context, so this is the one. And yeah, this is a property, so we have to just name it DB context like that. And instance of constructor of the unit over. This will accept the AGISDB context. So this will be DB context. And we have to assign it. So yeah. So if you call this unit group, you have it will accept the DB context. And so our implementation to save the database, this will be first we have to make this as asynchronous. So sync keyword, so that will be asynchronous. And we can put a try cuts here. And then basically we just have to return this asynchronous. We have to await underscore db context that saves changes async. And that would be it successful is greater than 0. Why the saves changes async? Why saves changes? Like that. So yeah. And then later on we introduce our logging here. So once there are an exception, we have to log it. So we have a smarter way to figure out if our application has a problem. So that's the unit of work concrete implementation. But later on, along the way that we create our repository for each entity, we need to add also the properties here for its repository. So we will go back later. I think there's a suggestion here that we can use primary constructor. So instead of doing that, can do like that. So it will be part to this class. Mm. It's as shorter code logic. But if you don't like that, you can just do that constructor. All right. So yeah. So we have now the unit of work implementation. So now we have to create the generic repository interface. So just create an interface here as well. New class, and that will be interface. Oops, I should name it. Anyway, we can just rename it here. And this will be our interface. I generic repository. Generic repository. And so generic repository, we have to make this as public. And as usual, we have to remove this unused namespace. And this generic repository is wrong spelling. Generic repository. Right? And then we have to make this as generic. So we have like that is what entities that we are going to pass. So that is generic parameters. And then inti, you could just have like that. And where T is meant to say this can only accept a class. That is a condition. If you omit this, anything can be accepted. For example, if it's not a class, it's just an enumeration, it can be, or it can be accepted as well. So we limit that to class only. And then for our generic repository, we have to define here, like for example, we have like it asynchronous of T. Uh, yeah, it's giving create entity. So that could be when you create an entity. That's one, just like that. So yeah, Visual Studio is helping us. So that would be like that. So update as well. So yeah, we can have that. And delete async. So but the delete async of T, so you have to pass the entity that we are going to delete, not by ID. Anyway, that could be fine. And then any suggestion, Visual Studio doesn't suggest anymore. So let's define our update async boolean update. What this Visual Studio is updating. So anyway, we can have this generic of T, a task of T, which is get by ID. So this is just searching by individual ID and get by name. Yes, it's just common to approach to yeah, and we have also to get enumerable. So this will be if, if you want to get all the value of the certain entities, you know, get all async like that. So this is generic, guys. So which means to say, you are not going to create individual repository like this. Because if you just have to pass the entity here. For example, what I'm talking about is if you have one entity, it will be just passed here and it has all his method that are available here. If you will not put it at generic, all you have to do is you have to create all individual repository for each entity. Maybe you can figure out that once we go along. Okay, so this is the generic repository. So we have defined common method here. So if we still think that there's another method that we can make it generic, so we just add it later on. So now we have to create our implementation for the generic repository. So we create our generic class, generic repository class, generic repository. So this is the concrete class or the implementation. So have to make this as well as public. And then since this is generic repository, we have to pass the state, and this will inherit the iGeneric repository, which is also a generic, so we have to pass the T, and very close, like thing like that. Why this is error? So we have the name is implement name. Yeah, we have to implement. So this is now the implementation. All right. So we go ahead and implement its method here. So, but first and foremost, we need to refine as well the where we get the connections for daily. So we just have to make this public and GIS, the AGI is the TV context name like that. And it's just a TV context, just like what we did in the interface. And then we can introduce the constructor, and we just pass the context here, the context, and then you have to assign it here. You can use this, I know, you just have to do it manually and blank. That's good to Visual Studio. And then you can actually make this as expression body. So if you put like that, but then that will be fine. So it won't it's readable that this is the constructor. And once you have that, so you have now access to the DB context. So for example, in the create async, so you can implement this. This is asynchronous. You have to put async here, and yeah, we just have to say await DB context. And what entities you are passing here. So we need to say set, and this is generic of T. So then we have the add async entity. Yeah, that one. But they are having error here. What's this? Not called called return. Because it's not all code plus return a value. Why should it return a value? It's just no return value. Why we are adding here? The generic is just here. So meaning how instead here we are making this just return. There's no return that that's only adding to the TV. So that's why you are not getting data. And then for the delete entity, so you just have this make this also as asynchronous. And then yeah, await. Of course, DB context. DB context. That's set. You have to set it because it's generic. What entities you are going to pass that, and that is what you are going to remove. Remove a sync. There's a remove sync. Only put it a sync. It's a problem here. Does not contain a division, get or reader. And what? Maybe context is T that this was moving here, but sets out to sit in the entity that it was. I think we don't have to put this as a symbols. We don't have to make this as a single thing. Okay, if we do that, we have just a pointer that the assign method locks away to operators and will not run synchronously. Anyway, that's all we did. So we'll figure it out how we can solve this later on. And then uh, we have the gate also. This one. In Mariupol, you get all the we make it as asynchronous as well. And basically, you just have to return await of course, maybe context. Let's say that is it or what entities you are, and then the tool is assigned. That's it. And then by get ID, we're passing the ID, so we just make it as a synchronous. We just return, maybe context it. This will be final async and then the ID that you're going to find what you are missing here. Error. And then it shall have another error. Does not support multiple reclamation. What's this? Figure out later. And the last one is the update async. So the update entity is making synchronous. Anyway, it async. And then you just have to return. There's no return for this. You just simply say the to the context. That's it. 30. Update. Update entity. And to associated. I think we should not make this as a single list. So we will update it later on if we can see. We're just following what this is just the usual way. What Visual Studio is suggesting. So let's update the same. Make it the same as in there. see that here. I don't have hero implementation. So yeah, you can just have like that. And this is just basically update the context. That's it. LT, update, entity. We like that only. All right, so we have our generic repository and we have our unit of work. So the next thing that we have to use for this is to define our its repository. So for example, we have here the bank repository. So if this is the approach that we need to do, we need to create its entity repository. So we have to create a class here, and let's say, for example, this is bank repository, like that. So have to remove this and just this sync as public. And this bank repository will inherit the generic repository of type. This is now the entity, which is bank group. And then also it will inherit the IRepository. We have to create first the interface. So instead of this, we just leave it like that for now, and then we will create the interface first of this iBank repository. So this is the interface for this entity bank repository. So what should be here? We make it public, and we just inherit the generic repository of type repository bank, the entity, and then just pass here the name piece because it's in another folder. Generic repository bank. Notice the problem here. Implement interface. Why should I implement an interface? Because why? This is class. It should be interface. Yeah, like that interface. So you need to implement. So these guys, all the method from our generic repository here, yeah, the definition signature, this one, all of this is now available when you call this bank repository because it's generic. Now, if you have a special method or a special implementation, which is not part of that generic repository signature or method of the interface, you just add here. For example, you have to uh, get bank by date, which is not fine in our generic and generic repository here. So that is specific here. You can add here. So that is why This is just the code because it's just waiting for any independent implementation under that entities. All right, so now we can go to our uh, one repository. So this will inherit the generic repository of type what entity that is bank. And of course, we have to use the namespace, and this will also inherit the iBank repository. So that way, what is this? Here is this. Yeah, we have to generate the context here. Okay, so this is the way how the bank repository. So it's inherit the generic repository of entity bank, which is also inheriting the interface. So if, for example, this interface, we add a signature here. Let's say, for example, let's just say boy. Let's just say I enable one get all by data about that. This is not what it was generic repository, and they add it for our fellow. Add it time, and then this is the date. Like that. So since you have that in that method, which is not part of your generic repository method. So when you go on the bank sorry implementation, you have to implement that bit here. So this will be the implementation of your method to get all. This is bank, so it means to say that you are going to bank record by date. So that's it. And yeah, we are passing here the DB context as a constructor. So maybe you can make it as a primary constructor as the Visual Studio suggested. It will be a smaller code like that. That will be that will do. But I like to do this so I can understand it. Yeah. So we have now for this bank, and then how we do call this one. Yeah. So okay. So in our unit of work implementation, so it will be available when we call that in our, for example, in our here in a controller, we just register the unit of work, and once that unit of work is being uh, injected with sleeping injection, it will be available as a collection. So how we do that is in the unit of work, we have to define the properties here for each repository. So what's that? Bank repository? Yeah, like that. Bank repository. And then, of course, since we add that in the interface, in the implementation, it will need to implement. So implement interface. So you have here the property bank repository. So it will be just like that, the internal implementation. So this one, you just have to create a new bank repository and add the DB context. So that's how it communicate. That's why we are making this as public, so it will be accessible. So once it's being created like that, now from our controller, uh, API here. Yeah, this one. We have a video forecast, so we just add a new controller here. A new class, new controller. Ah, so we just sell empty controller and what happened? This is the class. Wow, controller. So we have to define our API, API controller or attributes here. This, this will be using this might so be definitely more. And then find our role. Attributes. So say like that, or you can prefix here. Normally we have API and then controller name, I think. We can pass the controller name here like that. So our API signature or address will be the address, the API, and then just the controller, and then the attributes name. So now in the controller here, uh, we will inherit here the controller, and then inside here, uh, let's have the constructor first. And this is where we introduce or inject our unit of work. IUnit for see. And then of course you need to define the properties. Wait, the properties. So why it's here? I should have to put it here in the top. I could at the public that will be only private read on scheduling only available here. Private read only unit of work. I will name this as a unit or there is no key. This is just a private field. I will put assign a value here in the constructor living. Oops. Our unit will work is equal to yeah, so can use that. So first method that we have, like for example, it's HTTP post. It's HTTP post, so we are going to create the customer name. So we have to define the public async. This will be us since we use API controller. So we have this app soon result input and just have this to name is just to it, and we will pass what we are going to create here, the entity bank, it's only bank, and then say that is the bank. And yeah, we just have to take the name this was the entity, and then this is now the method. And yeah, basically, you can check if the model state is valid, is invalid, then you can just have to return CRUD request like that. Well, the model is invalid, you return request else, then this is the time that you just see await. See, you just have to use this unit of work. Then this is the customer. I know that is the bank. Unit of work, what they find is bank. Why is this bank repository? Why is your bank repository? I cannot see the bank. Yeah, let's create the single bank. But I'm wondering why it's bank repository. In our unit of work here, the passing bank repository, that will be just a bank. I think it's here in the unit of work. We name it bank repository. That's it, but we just have to use it that bank. And in the implementation, yeah, I said um simply bank, I think. So just because it's misleading bank repository. So that is a collection of the bank, and then after you get that, you have to do unit of work and then commit async. And that is the saving after saving. And then you have to, of course, return this one. Return OK, or you can return OK with OK. So yeah, that's it. So you can see if you run this one, let's take a look if it will give us what we want. I will just debug it here, and then first we just have to rebuild this. Let's see if we'll add the one. All right, so I should have this as the data project method out there. So I have no experience at using Docker, so we'll figure it out also how it's being used. By default, when you create the Visual Studio, there's an option that they create a Docker file. So it's need to uh study for that. So this is the INS Swagger. So you can see here we have the bank, and let's just try it out. And yeah, we can define the ID, for example, you want one, and the bank name is let's do just is bank like that, and everything. And we execute it, you should have uh, So what's we are missing, guys? The response status is 500, so it's meant to say that it's not existing. So actually, we forgot to register that there's an error. So we have defined that, but in our program.c is not an entry. We did not register it here. So that's why it's causing an error. We did not inject. So the services is not available yet because we did not inject it. So what we have to do here is filter services. This is the registration. The lifetime just filter that services that add scope. This is the lifetime that we just use add scope. There are different ways. That's the lifetime scope of the services. So we have add transcend, add singleton, add scope. So IUnitOfWork to register that it will be available like that. And then yeah, try it out alone. See, this is found to it is and execute. Right, so we got here. So this is your model. So yeah, and then we debug it. The unit works. We're here. Yeah, it's successful. We have still an error. Response is 500. Savings the inner exception. What's the problem here? Identity insert is set to O. Oh my goodness. SQL cannot insert explicit value. Oh, so it's meant to say this one. We are not going because that will automatically add by itself for the SQL server. The identity. So I think we get it. So we have 200 error and then we check our database if it's there. I'm just loading my SQL Server Management Studio. So we can take a look if what we added is really inserted. So this is my SQL Server SSMS. So this is the database that we are going to load in the table. So we are adding from banks, so we just have to query these banks. And exactly, this is the first error we have is this the identity. So it is set here to automatic. So if you go to the design, this one is identity specification is identities, yes. Which means to say it will increment itself, so you are not going to assign the value for it. All right, so I think that's pretty nice, guys, that we're able to. If you just take a look how it's minimal coding, right? So you just have to do this. You have no independent repository. You are just calling the unit of work and the collection of the bank, and you're just available in that. So you, if you follow along, so That's how the generic and unit of work work together. So what's the concept of unit of work, guys? So for examples, guys, you have you're adding your bank, adding your some entities. When you say create or like that, it's not actually saving to the database, but it's just in the memory. So the time that you are going to commit or the unit of work, it is saved as a single unit. So there is a transaction there. So it will also do this entity, there's also other entity, and if there's a failure for one entity or a failure for another, it will roll back by itself. So you don't have to manage it like what we did in our earlier version of Injecting framework that you have to call the transaction and then you have to manage it manually. But here everything is already taken care of for the internet framework. All right, so I think that's for now. Be able to create. What if we just add one more to query? Yeah, we just add one more to query. So to query, basically, this is have the certificate. That's a query. It's certificate attribute. So identifies the actions for the get method. So we define here public. Let's say for example, this is also asynchronous, and that will be task of I action result. And you have to name it as give all, and then yeah, just like that give all, and then example bar bounds. That will be our weight. You have to the unit of work, and we have to clean the bank collection. So you just have to see get all assigned, and that's it. And you can return. That's it, guys. So if you run this, so that's your code. And the result get, and then we just have to try this out and execute. There we go. We get the value. All right, so I hope you're following along and follow for more. Don't forget to subscribe so you will be notified for the next video. The continuation of this. The interesting one is the when we create our front end for the Angular for this. Alright, thank you guys for watching. Please share and let's learn together.